to question 10. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8. Yes, excellent. It's question 10. So the cinema stores information about ticket sales in a 2D array called cells. Each sublist contains a film title and the number of tickets sold for one show stored in a string or as a string. So we have our 2D array, and it's good as that. It looks like this, because in a test it would look similar to this. The only exception would be in a table, and it would have 0 there, 1 there, and then it'll go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just to show you where they're located within that 2D array. And it wants us to write a function called total tickets. So let's copy that in there. That takes the name of a film as a parameter and uses the cell array to calculate the total number of tickets sold for that film, and returns the total number of tickets as an integer using casting where necessary. I believe this is similar to the one underneath. So yeah, we'll just do the one today, and for homework I want you to try and attempt this one, but I'll upload solutions for that one. But I think I want you to try and work independently on that one and then try to figure it out as it goes on that one. Excellent. So we go on. We have the nurses, so we're not nurses, we're cinema cells. So just to start with, they want us to call our function total tickets, which is fine. And it said film, it said it wants a film as a parameter that a user is going to pass through an argument to. Also, I'll take the list here, just to save us a bit of time. And notice that, this could be in a straight line. I'll show you how it would look as well. It could look, in Python, it could look like this, and then so on and so on. However, I quite like the format it's in at the moment. That makes a lot of sense. Anyway, so we have our list here, or a 2D array. We know it's 2D array because we have lists within lists. Okay, so that will be our first element. This will make up our first element, second element, fourth, that kind of thing. So what is it asking of us now? It's asking us to calculate the total amount of cells. So in order to calculate a total amount of cells, we need somewhere to hold the value in. Okay, so I'll set a variable called counter, and I'll set it to 0 just to start off with. Excellent. Let's keep doing that. 0. Excellent. So now we need to iterate through this list to essentially get out the information. So we're going to use the for loop. So I'm going to say for I in range. Remember, this is our temporary variable. This can be called whatever I want it to be. It's another way of saying for each element in range. Okay, so for each element. However, if you start with I here and you want to use that iteration, it's got to be I further on down the line. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So essentially, I could ask it to iterate through that list 6 times, because we know there's 6 elements, and I could go 6 and it'll iterate 6. However, that's not, for me, it's not great practice, because, for instance, if someone adds another item or element to that list, then our code needs to be changed down here. However, if we want to make it dynamic and forever changing, in the test, if you were to put 4 range in 6, that's fine. I'll go over at the end of this different alternatives you could have done to get this distance. So I'm going to say for in range of len cells. So in the range, the len function will count how much elements are in there. So it will say the len function will automatically calculate this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it's quite responsive. So I know at least 6 loops are going to be going on. So we're looping through the list. We've got the amount of loops we need. I'm then going to say if cells, that's the list we're referring to, these are list indexes. We're going to put I iteration and 0 because we want to access these, and all of these, even though their first index might be 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, D's within the element of that list, this will always be 0, and that will always be 1. Okay? If cells are equals film, and whichever the film that they're going to enter here, then let's explain this a little bit before we go on any further. So this I in cell, so we know that is another word saying each element or each iteration, right? So on the first iteration, this I will have the value of 0. We can check that. We can check that because if we use that for range, just for example, for range for I in range of 8 and print I, it's going to print out a list of numbers from 0 up to 7. So we can see practically in the background what's going to happen. If we go back to that example here, on the first iteration, all of the code underneath here, every time you see the I, the first iteration is going to be 0. Remember, it counts from 0 to 1 is 0 index. So for instance, if the user was to later on enter, let's call it cells, this will help me call it again, and we write star battles. So the first iteration, if a user called that, if I write this now, it probably comes to error because we haven't finished it. However, if we was to write star, it's going to come to error because we haven't finished it here. Imagine this is our first name. Imagine we pass this over and the film equals star battles. It's going to say if cells I, on the first iteration, I is worth 0. So the position, the number or the name, at position 0, 0 is star battle. So that's 0, 0. Right? So we know that star battles does equals the value at 0, 0, which is star battles. So then the following code becomes true. Let me delete that right now. And you're going to say count, so we're adding to our counter, plus equals cells I and 0. Excellent. So we know that if that name does equal, so if that name in that first iteration does equal to the film they've entered, then we're going to get that counter and add whatever's in that first iteration, which is 0, that should be 1 there, 0, 1. So all of these are in position 1. So that'll be 0, 0, 0, 1. 1, 0, 1, 1. 2, 0, 2, 1. 3, 0, 3, 1. 4, 0, 4, 1. And 5, 0. And that'll be 5, 1. So if that name in the first column, on the first iteration, for instance, imagine every time you see I is a 0, so that first I here will equal 0. 0, 0 is going to be star battle. So if star battles equals film, and remember we had earlier that star battles are the film, so that is true, then we're going to add to the counter the value at that 0, because that same I, 1. So 0, 1 would be 45. So we know that number 45 would be added to our counter. And it will keep doing that, iterate the whole way through. So that will go for the next iteration, that'll be 1, and that'll be 2, the next iteration, 3, 4, 5. So just looking at it, on the first iteration, that'll be true, so that'll add 45. On the second iteration, third iteration, fourth, fifth, and sixth iteration, again, that statement here will be true, thus adding 6 or 5, 1, remember because it counts on 0, 5, 1, which is 5, 1. So 15 will be 5, 1. So we did add it onto the total. So this is fine. If I want to print out the counter, just the value of counter, right? So I run this. Remember, once you run a function, unless we call it, it doesn't matter. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. It's just not going to come out of output anything. So the first thing I'm going to do is call it. We know the counter. We know the name of the function is total tickets. I'll pass through star battles. And it should print out the value in star. Total ticket size. We'll have one more problem relating to these after as well. And then we're going to figure out how we're going to discuss that and fix that. These are strings at the moment. Excellent. So it's going to say not supported between operands and int and string, line 16. So this is what is called casting. Remember casting, we talked about casting being converting a data type. So one is casting string, one is int, and the other one is floats altogether. And that converts whatever's there into a string, that converts whatever's there into a integer, if it's applicable, and that converts whatever it is into a float, which is a decimal. But we don't need that for now. But we do need it just further up. So the problem here is we need these values here, which these are going to be all of our numbers. We need that to represent an integer. So what we can do is write int, and whatever's in within this value will get added or converted to an int. So let's run it again. Now we can see that it's added the counter, the film's tickets from that film called Star Battle. And we know it's true because 45 is there, 20, so that's 65, plus 15. On a simple thing like this, you might not see the practicality of it, but as you get into bigger programs that some companies would use, this is where it becomes a bit more useful. If, for instance, these were not strings, so these were like 45 on its own, you wouldn't have to use this int because the numbers already be integers. But in this scenario, the numbers are an integer, so let's put those back. Excellent. So we called it. So in another scenario, for instance, it might turn around and say, okay, if a film is sold over 60 tickets, it's successful, print out successful, else print out unsuccessful. So to do that, I'd say if counter, remember after this loop's done, it's going to go to the next line of code, right? If counter is bigger than, I don't know, we'll say bigger than or equal to 80, let's say 70, then print success. Else print, what are we doing? Sorry, I'm very tired. Else print failure. So we will know now, once we run this, it's going to use the counter, instead of printing out the title, it's going to use the counter value to determine that if this film has sold over 70 or 70 tickets or more, it's a success, else print failure. And we can run another name through this, for instance, and we could say lost in space, and it should return back failure because lost in space has sold 55 rather than 70. Okay. Anything I want to add on? Not hugely important, but if you wanted to, instead of make it a bit more practical, hopefully I don't mess it up now. What is the film's name? Might not let us, but we'll try. Otherwise, I've ruined a good video. What is the film's name? Let's see if this is practical. Total tickets input. What is it? Oh, sorry. And so this is now where the user can enter. You don't need to know this for the exam or anything. Just us showing, practicing good habits. Star battles. So if the user press star battles, no, we don't need this. Then it should return back success. You see? But once again, in the exam, I don't think you'd even need to call it unless it tells you to. But in the exam, you just put star battles. well, you would need to do this part, but then we'll focus on this code here.